Great. Well, thank you very much for the introductions. Apologies for the slight delay. Great pleasure for me to be here today. I'm Seb Ouselin. I'm an engineer in computer science by background, and the work that I'm most leading daily is the development of our MedTech hub at St. Thomas campus in very close partnership with KHP, and in particular in this case, guys in St. Thomas Trust, and in particular St. Thomas campus. Just only as perhaps a reminder, we have those fantastic academic health science centers across England, and one of them is in fact King's Health Partners, which regroup our key hospitals, GSTT, KCH, and Moseley, and which has been expanded recently as well by the inclusion of the Brompton and Harefield, which in partnership with King's College London, give us access to a very large clinical throughput and footprint of over 4.8 million patient contact a year, but very importantly represent as well one of the largest educations opportunity we have in the UK, if not in Europe, where we teach in fact a huge variety of healthcare workers, so not only medics, but a huge amount of nurses, radiographers, and medical physicists, for instance. And this partnership gives us really an opportunity to embed research into our education, but as well embed research in our clinical environment. We have built our King's Health partnership based on a co-location model between the university and the hospital. You see those three main pillars here, which of course will expand certainly around respiratory and cardiovascular with the inclusion of the Brompton and Harefield opportunity. And I'm not going to go into main detail of all of them, but I'm particularly interested by the first pillar, which is around the medical technology, which we've developed over the last 10 years and have been leading over the last 7. And really it's based on one, I think, very important fact, which I think it's important to, is really key to highlight, and I can actually make this comment by not being medically qualified, is in fact most of the medical technology, as they are developed by engineers, by computer scientists, electrical engineers, roboticists, and they tend to not really grasp the challenge of patient pathway, of reimbursement, of regulatory, of interoperability, of manufacturing, and of integrations of those technology into our pathways. And there is always a very fine line between being innovative and being disruptive. And I always advise people, try to innovate without disrupting the pathway, so that you've got a better chance to actually get where you want to be, which is really to make a difference to patient. And on the case of the engineers, they love developing technology without thinking really about how much it's going to cost. Is it going to be green? Is it going to be easy to manufacture? Is it going to be easy to integrate? And more importantly, quite often, they don't really particularly think about who is going to pay for it. So we really need to change pivot those type of conversation. And mostly what we truly believe is a way to pivot those conversation was by fully integrating those STEM subjects into a clinical environment. And these co-locations that we've been doing between, I would say, pure research and pure clinical delivery needed to be enhanced by other activity of the lack of regulatory advisors, commercials, industry partners, getting all of those different piece of the pathways that you need to actually deliver this multidisciplinary work, which is required to put in place when you want to bring a technology into the patient bedside. But perhaps as well, very importantly, it's a difference of perspective from an academic point of view, which is if you are living on the academic world, you judge by papers, H-index, citations, grant income. You're rarely judged by how many lives you've touched with your technology, which I think is really fundamentally an issue, and so something that we need to change. And we did change our equation. We did change our question mark, which is when we have our academics in our school, which is quite a large activity now with over 88 academics, a mix of clinicians and engineers and computer scientists, we don't think about how many papers we're going to get out of our grant. We think much more about how we're going to optimize patient benefits out of our research. And this is really a culture change. And the way to achieve this is not to think about your outcome as being a clinical translation purely. It's about thinking as well about it being a commercial translation as well. And I think that's as well a change of mindset. When you start your research program, while you know that you're going to have a lot of hurdles in front of you if you start to embed into regulation, for instance, reimbursement strategies and deployment, however, you're very likely to shorten the path it will take for the technology to go from bench to bedside to boardroom, I like to use this phrase, to really get your technology being real and really touch patients at scale. And so it's not all about brain power, and of course we do need the brightest mind. It's as well about infrastructure, and as I say, culture change. And it's really working in partnership, in this case, between the NHS, the university, and very importantly, the industry. And so I was very lucky, I'm saying this in the room, to meet Jan Abs, CEO of GSTT, many years ago now, and to be convinced that St. Thomas Hospital was actually a great place to be able to do that. Because if you really want to do it for real, if you really want to integrate your technology into patient pathway, you have to be embedded into the hospital. I don't think there is any other way. There is absolutely no way for an engineer, for a computer scientist, for a biologist to understand what it means to develop technology for the service of patient without being able to be in contact with patient. So we radically changed the way that we did our research, and we spent a huge amount of investment. I mean, we're talking about over 120 million pounds of capital to embed into a very active NHS trust what we believe is one of the largest concentration of infrastructure for research, but we as well provide clinical delivery. And again, this is a very important aspect. And I will give you a few examples about where I think it actually makes really a difference. The first one was the expansion of our MR activity. We run jointly now, in this case, nine MR scanners. We made a very strategic move to work very closely with one specific partner, in this case, Siemens Healthineers. We have other manufacturers when we have other scanners, but in this context, those scanners are all fully co-located side by side. And what we do, which I think is quite special, is we use those scanners in partnership with our partners to develop new sequences, in this case, or new devices, for instance, for elastography, which not only we can test on our patients, but as well we can help to integrate in close collaboration with our partners because they are physically on site co-located with us. In this case, we have now more than 12 scientists, no cell rep, no commercial scientists from Siemens Healthineers working with us side by side. And that's actually now the largest R&D outside of Erlangen, for instance, in MR. And so this gives us an opportunity to really embed our research within a clinical activity, which accelerates the pace at which we can deliver those activities. And what is quite remarkable is when you start to do this at scale, it does have an impact on your patient in terms of satisfaction as well. And that's something to me which is really exciting. I mean, everyone talk about the poor level of satisfaction of our patients, 25% or less of patients are satisfied by the service they obtain. In our case, in our clinical services, for instance, the one on cardiovascular MR, our patient satisfaction is above 90%. Right? And the main reason of this is because most of those patients are as well willing to do research. We have the same, pretty much the same statistics. 90% of our patients are very happy to contribute and to be embedded into research pathway. So to get the clinical care, but as well to be part of a research experiment. So I do genuinely believe this is a win-win situation, especially in a very cash-limited environment here. When we talk about very expensive piece of equipment, putting a scanner at the middle of a field is cheaper for sure than putting another scanner in an hospital when you're going to allocate some time of this scanner for research. But it does add a huge amount of value to your patient, and it does accelerate the pace at which commercialization becomes a reality. The same thing has been done as well for PET Center, when recently we were awarded, in collaboration with MRC and Siemens, 2 total body PET systems. So we are the only site, in fact, in the UK with two systems. The first one was actually launched a few weeks ago, and after a few glitches, now we be able to scan our patient. And again, full mix of research with industry support and clinical services, which I think is really, really, really key. The same concept now has been embedded into our surgery and intervention, and while I do agree that diagnostic is a very important challenge, and we should try to get all of our diagnostic facility outside of an hospital, it's certainly the way to go, and to go close to the community, and technology of the like of low field MR will actually play will be a huge factor into this. But if you look at the amount of patients who come to the hospital, a third of them will come for surgery and intervention once the diagnostic has been made properly. And it's an area which is under-deserved in terms of research, most of all because we have very limited access to operating room for research. We've got very limited surgeons who actually have time to do research. We have limited PhD, MD programs in this domain. So we really try to radically change this, to move from basically an idea into a first clinical trial on patient on site in less than 5 years. And so what we developed, again, in very close collaboration with the hospital, is a bespoke facility to be able to not only do research, but to train our surgeons with the new technology. In this case, for instance, we train our surgeon in this same facility on the new robot from CMR. We train our surgeon now on our own with using our own cadaveric facility, all-body cadaveric facility, and dedicated operating room on the new Mazor solution from Medtronic for pedicle positioning. But this room is, of course, kind of a know-how of the future. So you've got dedicated cameras in the room, you've got sensors, you can record all this information, is linked with a dedicated supercomputer, and you can do actionable AI. And again, in this context, you can not only do research, engineering research, and again, a lot of challenge here in terms of interoperability, because usually engineers will develop this outside of the operating room environment. But then you can do training and proctoring on your clinicians, and very importantly, you can actually bring industry. And now we've got major industry partners who are doing their training across the UK using this facility. This led, in fact, to another success recently of getting the only large doctoral training program funded by UKRI in surgery intervention, when we will train more than 90 students or PhDs in this field, which again will increase the workforce in this domain quite substantially. And another important aspect is, if you want to really take advantage of the in-house exemption, you need to be able to manufacture on site as well. So thanks to the support again from another founder, in this case a Wellcome, we managed to build a clean room facility for dedicated class 2 and class 3 medical devices. And then you can start to talk about low-scale manufacturing, right? First time I tried to manufacture a device, very simple device, I had to send it in another country to be done, right? And my technical file in my hand, and I couldn't really get it into the right format, which is basically going through an ISO 13485 QMS environment, right? So what we did is we built a QMS team, which is dedicated to manufacturing, with appropriate manufacturing facility, to enable our clinicians, to enable our healthcare workers to work with us and to develop those technology. And once we've tested it in the wild on cadavers, and that's considered as safe, then you can actually manufacture it and do it first in patient. And then the last part I just wanted to mention, which I think is certainly the part that a lot of people are interested in, is around AI and the opportunity that AI brings. A lot of people will build algorithms. That's what they do. They love to do that. We realized very early that the challenge wasn't about getting an AI algorithm up and running, was to get the data to get the AI algorithm up and running. So it was not really an algorithmic issue. And again, yes, there is amazing technology to work on, and we do Gen AI, we do a lot of research on the next generation of self-learning algorithms as well. But fundamentally, access to data is challenging. Access to well-curated data is super difficult. Getting them connected properly, linking the unstructured with the structured data set is a big challenge. Doing this at scale while bringing information governance in place as well at the same time is very challenging. So we've been doing this for the last now 6 years, bring many NHS trusts together. and decided to focus on the deployment and training of those technology. How can we use, for instance, federated learning at scale, NLP at scales, to be able to curate our data and connect them properly? How do we deploy those algorithms? So this whole challenge of not having access to an equivalent of an app store in your hospital, and each time someone comes with a new algorithm, you have to spend a huge amount of time with your IT team to just get it integrated, which is a pure waste of funding, but more importantly, this is a time that your IT team doesn't have. So how can we solve this? And again, we decided we cannot do a non-invented here kind of perspective, and we work with a German company who is now having his co-location in the UK in our building called Deep Sea, and build this deep OS across GSCT and across 6 other hospitals. And very importantly, in my presentation, I always talk about industry, and what we realize very quickly is it is an M&A, a merger and acquisition model. We need to work with the large companies, we need to work with the small company, but more importantly, we need to support the small company to thrive. And we need to give them access to the infrastructure, which could be only available to researchers, or will be far too expensive as well for them. So we decided to invest jointly with UKRI, with Research England, and develop a dedicated building that we opened a few months ago called the London Institute for Healthcare Engineering, which basically is co-located next to the south wing of St. Thomas Hospital, which can host small and large companies, which provide the training programs in the form of an accelerator and a venture builder dedicated to medtech, and give access, and that's only the tip of the iceberg, give access to all of those facilities I just mentioned to entrepreneurs, but as well to major industry partners, to make sure that we can actually support this at pace. And you cannot do that without having a close relationship with an NHS trust. And by the way, I don't like to use the word the NHS. So NHS is 210 plus CEOs, right? You need to have a relationship with one CEO, you need to have a relationship with one board, and then you can move forward. But I will never say I work with the NHS. I work with some specific trust. We can talk about how do we scale this up, that's a different challenge. Just to mention a few success stories. Very briefly, one of them was Innosight. We developed 3D surgical models, demonstrated its value, user infrastructure I just mentioned, including our operating room to be able to develop this technology, was acquired by Storch before Christmas. Storch is one of the largest medical device company in endoscopy. Hyperspectral imaging, we developed a technology which enables you to do perfusion imaging in real time, STO2 imaging. It's a kidney on a pig in this case, and when we can see before and after clamping how the color change is becoming brighter. It's actually, to do this right now, you need ICG, you need to inject a contrast. You have only one single bolus, you need to basically see it now in a dark mode, a dark room, or otherwise you will miss it. In this case, it's real time using artificial intelligence technology combined with super resolution. And this company specifically started in August 2020, used the infrastructure we had, used Innovate UK, used NIHR grant, and at the end raised a private investment of 7 million to go to FDA and go to UKCA, and now we're actually running a trial across 3 sites in the UK. And the last point was our 10 years anniversary coming up next week, in fact, with Siemens Healthineers. We started with 1 scanner. We now have an absolute large fleet, but more importantly, we co-train over 20 PhDs together. Now we've got 3 of those PhD students who are actually working for Siemens. We generated over now 110 publications together, 41 patents, and this is a funnel, and it takes time. And this is really where people, I think, sometimes are just too hasty and just want a quick result with an industry partners. It's 10 years of work to reach a pipeline. Everyone will talk to you about what's your pipeline, what is your funnel. We had 2 product launches this year. We've got 6 coming in the coming years, and we've got another 4 in the few years. And now we've got this up and running, and I would love to see more of those type of relationships happening across the UK, and I will be delighted to discuss this further with you if you're interested to contribute. Thank you.
The Harley Street Health District, the home of healthcare since 1860.